Hello folks, I'm L.A. Little and this is today's TA-Wrap, the Daily Wrap, coming to you live from the Rocky Mountains. We take a look at these markets each and every day, 4 days a week, Monday through Thursday, live at 9 o'clock Eastern Time here from the base of the Rocky Mountains. Folks, it's been a long day, kind of a tiring day actually. Got a lot of things to do today. Part of the tiring, part of the I guess the exhaustion, if you will, that's coming from these markets has to do with the markets themselves. And you know, I had the pleasure when my boy was really young to take him to a basketball game to see Michael Jordan. And I never thought that I'd see anyone that would exhibit the hang time of Jordan. I never thought that that would happen, but you know, with this market, I'm beginning to wonder if that assumption is true, because this market has hang time. It just doesn't want to give it up. Let's take a look at the numbers here today. We did get a pullback to some degree today. Nothing big, but in this market on the downside, nothing is big. Had the industrials pull back 77.5, 16,000, just barely over 16,009 roughly. S&Ps, they were up, they were down. I'm so used to saying up. They were down almost 18,000, right at that round number. Composite 14.5 lower, 45.25. The NDX down 6. Almost 7, 3481. Index still doesn't want to give anything up. It's just barely down today. The big loser though was the Russell, and we're gonna have to look at that guy. 1129 was the close, down 13.75, 1.2%. We had gold. We had commodities in general just whacked. Gold down 32 bucks. Silver down 4% at one point. Dollar was up today. It looked like last night the dollar wanted to bounce, but the euro didn't look like it wanted to pull back, but in fact that is what happened. Bonds, again, lost on the day. And as I look at those, and we'll look at that together, I'm beginning to wonder if interest rates are going to be the demise of this market, if in fact they do start to break to the top side. We'll see if that happens. Oil held steady despite the commodity onslaught today, but the real news was in the market. We finally got some sort of a pullback. Let me pull over here and grab the numbers, not the numbers, but the symbols, the charts. Let's start with the S&P. Okay, so if I pull this back, look at the S&P. You know, one of the things that you have to realize and have to just get used to is that you're not always going to get clues all the time, right? We've been hanging up here for five bars now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bars. Today makes 6. slightly easing back into the last high it went over. That was 1802. We're back underneath it, so we're back into that bar. That bar's got 31.6 on it. We did 30, almost 31 on the way back. So you're coming back into the bar with about the same volume. Does that tell you a lot? Not really. You're easing back into it. Not much volume. Doesn't really tell me much. If I look at the Dow Jones looks a little bit different in that it was extended even more so, had that big reversal. It comes back. It's back in. The same sort of thing here in terms of going sideways. It's back into the same area. 16,030 were those numbers. It's back underneath them. 925 on the way back. Did 950 over there. So you can see as we're coming back in, we're not really getting volume escalation on the listed issues. If we look at the strongest sectors, we'll start with the general market in the NASDAQ. The NASDAQ comes back today. Again, it has a long ways to go now just to get back to this high. Nothing really there, right? A little bit of a push off the top. The NDX looks the same, even though the NDX didn't want to hardly give anything up today. It went up, made a new high. Now what we did see is we saw, over-unders, but there, you had no volume on Friday, so there's really no two-bar reversals, and even if there was, I don't know if that's really extended yet. Can these pull back a little bit? Yeah, they can, but the story for the last 3-4 months has always been the Russell. And again, the Russell is the one that's trying to give some clues. So the Russell comes off the top, volume a little bit heavier, but 309 coming back into the swing point high, which has 362. Now it hasn't got there. It's 1123 on that number. Russell got to 1127. So you're about 4 points away. There's multiple things here to talk about, so let's draw them in as we go. The first thing is that you're coming back within 6 bars. You've got 4 here on the breakout. 1, 2, 3, 4. This is the 5th bar on the way back. If we get back tomorrow and we clip into this, that will be the 6th bar. Why is that important? Well, if you come back within 6 bars, first off, you should come back within 6 bars. You should have a higher probability as a result of it being suspect. But typically, if you get back within 6 bars, you have a much better chance of getting deeper into the bar that you're retesting and trying to regenerate on. What is that bar? Well, that bar is this area, right? It's trying to come back into that area. Why is that important? Well, that's a big bar. 1104 is the low on that bar, 1123 the high. So it's a 20 point bar. It's a wide price spread bar. If we come into the bar, and especially if volume picks up, and we do it tomorrow, I think there's a greater, well, not I think, there is a greater potential that you'll get deeper into the bar. And the real test on that, let me redraw that. The real test on that, if in fact we do get deeper into it, will be this high from here, right? That will be the one we'll want to watch, because if we get into that one, I suspect we're going to come to the bottom of the bar or try to. That top is 1119. The top here is 1123. So the real area that I would want to focus on as I study this tomorrow, if in fact it does come in, is can it get deeper than this zone? In other words, can it get back down in here? If you do, more than likely you're going to do a full retest regen, or at least try to do a full retest regen. And what that means is that you come up, you come down, potentially all the way to the bottom of it, and then try to go back up. If you do that, there's not very much here, so in other words, the climb back up isn't going to take you very much farther on an ABCD structure. Now that structure looks very different, and I'll change the color here and we'll look at it in a different one. If we come up here, right, and we come back and we're already about as far as we want to go, and then we can regenerate much higher. So you can see tomorrow is going to kind of be an interesting day. Do we get into the bar? Do we come in within 6 bars? If we don't, then the probability associated with that buy is much higher when it finally does do the retest regen. Tomorrow, it's a toss-up. If we get into it, it's not a toss-up. It's about a 60%er. If we get into it, we can actually get deeper, and you want to wait to do your buy. So the Russell is the one to watch. The Russell has been the one to watch. This guy's going to give us the clues as to where everything wants to go. Let's go to the, I want to flip over to Ox markets, and then we can come back and look at the sectors. The sectors aren't showing us much. But I want to go to the Ox markets because today we had some interesting activity, and this is what I was talking about as I came on about what might be the undoing of this market. We had some interesting activity, big volume here on the municipals. The municipals broke down, broke a swing point low. They had been in this larger range up here now for, I don't know, that's quite a while. I don't know exactly what the time frame is there, but it's a fairly large range. They've been in for, what is it, about 6 weeks. And matter of fact, you know, if you really look at it, that range was set up back here, right? And then your lower one is in this area. Well, today you broke into the lower one. And unless that recaptures tomorrow, unless that pushes back up, municipal bonds are going to try to trade back down to the lows. Okay, and the reason I'm watching these is because I keep looking for clues as to what bonds are going to do. You got a break of a swing point low, you got volume expansion. That says it's going to try to trade lower. If it does trade lower, look for it to try to trade down into these lows. Now the other one is the junk bonds. Junk bonds, remember, if we pull this out so that we have the weekly on here as well, junk bonds had traded up. Remember, they sold off deep in June, July. The market sold off then, but it didn't sell off big. Since then, we pushed back up, right? We pushed back up to the swing point high to try to retest on that swing point high. Now, what we did see as part of this on the initial move was that we came back up and we did the retest regen right here, right? And it regenerated lower, came back down. Now it's coming back up to test that same area. If you can't get over this, right, that's a big story. And what that says, to me at least, is that that higher range that we had in effect, we can't get back into it. And we're going to still trade in the lower range that has been put in. And that would mean that you potentially come back down here and trade even lower. Now, the one thing that stands out here is we actually did have a clean reversal, so it doesn't have to come back down here again. But I want to watch this on a weekly, and the reason I come back to it today is we did break off the high, gap down. The big bar here is the November 8th bar. 40.35 is the low. We traded down into 40.47. The swing point high previously that was retested, right? And that was a clean retest regens. You see these all the time, folks. You know, I don't know why anyone ever really picked up on it, or, you know, maybe it was in different nomenclature, right? But look at that perfect retest regen off that swing point high, right? Off this break. You come back, you test, you don't have the volume, it's not there. Back up the other way, you test the top. You can't get over it, what are you going to do? Well, you're going to try to come back and test it again. If this breaks, that's going to bring this down into here, right, and potentially bring it lower. So, and the reason these are important is junk bonds are a leading indicator to a great degree of what is going to happen to the market. Notice that the junk bonds began to come off in May, right? If I pull up the SPX on that same time frame, matter of fact, let me just put it over here, and we'll put it on the weekly here. and compare the two, we started to crack. Really, the first push off was May 13th bar. Over here, May 20th was the high, May 13th. But look at how these began to really crack, and then we finally got a decent push down with some volume. We got the push down on June 17th. Here we were already cracking on end of May, early June, and then a big push on the 17th along with this one. The reversal here stopped it all. But if this starts to push down and starts to push down with some authority, you can expect this market's finally going to give some of it up where they haven't been willing to yet. So bonds, and I'll go now just to the TLT itself. Bonds themselves can't lift. I expect them to lift, but they can't. I have been expecting them to lift, but they haven't been able to. They tested the lows twice. You can't keep testing. Third time down, there's actually some statistics on this. Third time down, it gets very hard to hold. We're coming down there again. We're going to have to see if they can hold or not. If the bonds break and we go to higher rates, over 3%, this market's going to have a hard time. This is an important area to watch. So those are the main things I wanted to bring up tonight. We could look at some of the sectors. I will flip over and look at some other stuff here as well. I do have some questions, so let me hit a couple of those first. If that generates some other questions, then I'll continue on. If not, I'll come back and cover some other things. So I had one emailed to me. Let's go look at that one first. Then I see a couple questions on the boards over here. I'll go to those next. So Zach asked me, how does SCTY look? Where do you think it will trade back to? And I assume you mean to the upside. So Solar City, this is in the SOX. It's a semiconductor in the solar panels. So where do I think this one's going to go? All right, so it had pushed to a high of 49, tested it 3 times, and came off. Okay, so this is going to have difficulty still in this area, right? You can see where this resistance zone, let me point it out here as we go. You can see where the resistance zone is drawn, right? There's a little area right in this area. And it's really the 2 key bars that are being keyed off of are the high, right, and this big volume drop off of it. And both have them decent volume. Both of them are fairly wide price spread, right? Fairly large price spreads. That makes that area very difficult to get over. So to get over this is going to require a lot of effort. So when I look at it from that perspective, I don't think it's going to get much higher than there. That price point's 56, about 56.20 to 50. So I think that's going to be a tough spot to get over. The downside has been capped by this big bar on the way up. And these are all dailies I'm looking at. So you came into it, right? You hit it with, 13.1. You're coming into 17. Not enough. Go back up, come back down. Less volume this time. You're doing 7.9. You still can't knock it out, right? What are you going to do? Well, you're going to try to go back up again. This happens to be the breakout bar, and it got right to the lows of it. But as you saw here today, you got a reversal on less volume. You coming back up into the first resistance zone, which is which one is it? Which bar? It's coming off of this bar, which is pretty heavy volume itself. Can you get over it now? That's going to come back and try to test again. You may have seen your high today. You may get back up to there. I don't think you're going to get over that. As far as where can it come to on the downside, I think solar is so overbought, has been for a while. 40.28, that low is 40.41. Yeah, I think you can get down, and if you can test this again, you know, it looks to me that this thing's trapped. I mean, maybe that's just the best way to say it. It's not clear it's going to break down yet because this bar is holding it still way too much volume. If you bang on it again and then you do it again, you're probably going to break it, right? Because what you're doing every time you do that is you're eating up the buyers, right? Every time you come down, you eat up some of the demand. And so each time down makes that zone, you know, that's really the principle behind it. It makes it weaker. Why is it weaker? Well, because there's not as much demand there anymore. Some of it has already been taken away. And, you know, unless those pockets are really deep, it's going to eventually break it. I don't think you're going to get much higher, and I think that hopefully that was the question. So let's look at another one here. So what do we got? ATL Atlas. So let's see what ATL looks like. So at Latsa Resources. So this is a basic materials, industrial metals, and minerals. Given the shellacking that sector has taken, this has held up pretty well. So this is a penny stock. And let's see some of the bad days. So it's doing 80, 90,000 a day. It's not big volume, but it's okay volume. So this one's tested at the top. I'm gonna look over the weekly. Let me see. So the question says, could you look at it on the weekly? It looks to be setting up for a buy around these levels at about 40 cents. Okay, so I don't know if I agree, and the reason for it is this. So you had a high right here, right? You tested it here, got over it, and then immediately came back under it, and you tested with less volume. So you get over it. You get over it. The swing point it broke was here. You got over it. You came back, and I suspect you're going to get your buy point here. But the question is can you get over that spike high again? My guess is you probably can't. Let me look at it on the daily. So I need to see the volumes here. So the daily tested, yeah, so I do think you'll get one more test of the top at least, but I don't know if you're going to get over it. It doesn't look like you will, actually. You hit it with decent volume, not enough. You're going to come back, you're going to find buyers, you're going to come back up and try again because you got this swing point high up here now with volume on it. You came off with decent volume. My take is you'll come back up there, you'll try to test it again, and just the way this chart looks, it's probably going to fail. And we're probably going to come back. So if you do trade this back up, I wouldn't stick around if it can't break it out. Because it looks to me like this thing's going to actually trade back down into this zone. So I wouldn't stick around on the buy if I were you. So that's Atlasa. Let's look at the other one. The other one is BLDR. So BLDR, let me see what these guys do. So this is Builders First Services, Home Improvement Stores. Let's see what they look like. So this group has been getting hit lately. It had a nice run. Okay, so this one actually had a nice run up. It did have a reversal here though. This looks to me like a range trade now. Okay, and the reason for it, range trades set up usually off of spikes, right? Fast spikes like this, where you get a failure, and the failure in this particular case is you go over this bar here, back underneath it, less volume, right? And even though you had a nice push up with some decent volume, you came back underneath it, right? So that's going to set up probably some sort of a range trade back into this probably this top of the range. But the real key to that is seeing the spike up over here that does the same sort of thing with no volume afterwards. So your range has probably set up in this area now. And you're back into a buy zone today. And let's see here. That has less volume on it coming back into it. You broke a swing point low. And on the weekly, you're okay for now. Yeah, you probably get a push back up into this area. The nice part about this, if you're wanting to buy it, which I assume you are, is you don't have to give it hardly anything. So if you get a price point into here, right, you don't give it hardly any room, and you're shooting back for this high. And it's a range trade. Citigroup. Let's see what Citigroup did. I had a video on Citigroup sometimes back, about a week or so ago. I liked the way Citigroup was setting up, and we were waiting to see. I don't even remember exactly what the video said at this point, but I know that it was a breakout, and we were looking to trade it. But honestly, I never got into it. So it was going up to try to break all the swing point highs. It got over one of them, didn't get over the other ones yet. All right, so that's the good news. And it had some decent volume as it did it. And that's good news. Okay, so now it's coming back finally. So what you can expect, this is a retest regen, right? What are you regenning off of? You're regenning off of this high. You came back within 6 bars. When you do that, typically, the odds are it will try to trade down and do a full retest back to the bottom of the bar. So what you want to look for, and this one happens to set up really nice because there's another swing point there as well. So if it can swing back into this area, that would be a sweet spot to pick it up. So that price zone that you're looking at is roughly, what is this high? About 51.5 to about 52 roughly. So somewhere in that area would be a nice area to try to pick it up. And then what you're risking is back underneath. I would probably give it, if I were trading it, I'd probably want to give it the bottom of the support zone plus an ATR 0.2% of it. So somewhere, your stop goes somewhere back down, in this area. And, you're not risking that much if you can pick it up into this area. So, not a bad spot. I mean, and the ideal here is that eventually this thing's going to try to take out all these highs. And if it does, it's going to get a nice boost. So, I like the setup, and I'm glad you keep bringing it up. It keeps me looking at it. Let's go back. I got a couple minutes. I want to go back, maybe look at gold real quick. Actually, let's take a quick. Gold got decimated and is going after the lows on the weeklies now, so I guess I'll leave that alone. Let me go look at overseas. So, Asia real quick. Actually, Brazil. Let's start with Brazil. Brazil got hammered today. Let's see what that looks like. Brazil broke lows. Yeah, that's an ugly move on the way back. That's going to trade lower. It's going to trade down into this area. So it's going after these swing point lows, 50,000 roughly, round number. It's trading at 51. That's another 1,200 points. So Brazil getting hurt. I assume Australia got hurt last night. I didn't look to see because it's resource country too, and yes, it did, and it's also breaking lows. So you can see the resource stocks or resource countries getting hit. Let me look quickly at Toronto. I expect Toronto probably shows me about the same thing. No, not as bad. So Toronto's still holding up. Let's quickly look at Hang Seng. China itself didn't do too well last night. Hang Seng was up. We'll see if there was any volume behind it. And not much, but it did get a nice spike up. So it's got its breakout going here. We'll see if it can continue. Let me go over to Europe real quick. So London should have got hit. It's more of the metals. The metals got hurt, so I'm assuming it got hurt, and it did. Volume not picking up. And this one now is starting to get a little bit more worrisome. This is the first one in Europe that's starting to have real problems. So you broke a swing point low, and it looks like you didn't have the volume, so it's going to be a suspect break. That one can trade deeper back into maybe 65.30. Let's see what DAX. Now the DAX has just been setting high after high after high, kind of like us, and that is an over-under, but it has too much volume. Too much volume, so you can get a little pullback, but it's not a 2-bar reversal. Let's look at the CACs. And the reason I'm interested in Europe is Europe had PMIs. Everybody had flash PMIs. CACs can't get going. It's just range trading. All of them had PMIs. Europe mixed. Poland strong. Czech was pretty strong. Most of the large ones not so strong. We go over to Asia. You had decent numbers out of China. That's what got that one going, and Hang Seng. Here in America, U.S., strong numbers as well. That is, of course, what hit gold. All the taper talk comes out as soon as we see strong numbers economically. What do you watch tomorrow? Watch the Russell, watch the bonds. That's the two tails. Those are the ones that are going to tell us where we go next. I've been expecting a pullback. You know, I mean, just from a trader's perspective. We haven't done anything but go sideways. If you can't break out, eventually you're going to break back down, at least to some degree. Tomorrow we'll see what that test looks like on the Russell. That's going to be a big test. If we start to break on the bonds this week, that's also going to be a big number. Folks, have a great one. Thanks for joining me. I will catch up with you tomorrow. We'll do it all again. I'm LA, and this is and was your daily TA Wrap. Have yourself a great night. Take care.